Committee meeting. My name is Daniela Thanis, and I'll call this meeting to order. I'd like to start with introductions to my left.
Barry Teague, Student Representative.
Jeff Bowe.
Becky Stanton.
Michael Woodlock, Assistant Superintendent.
Hi, Mike Flanagan, Superintendent.
Ryan McMahon.
Rob Mullen.
Joe Messina, Business Administrator.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a reminder that these meetings are video and audio recorded. I was supposed to say that at the top. I didn't, missed it, moving on. I'd like to seek a motion at this time to approve the minutes from the November 28th, 2023 Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee meeting, the 11/28/23 School Committee meeting, and the 11/28/23 Executive Session meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That does carry 5-0-0. And moving on to citizen time. Seeing none, we have no correspondence at this time, and so I will move on to personnel. Notification of new hire, Catherine Reaney will be coming back to TES as a paraprofessional. Their notification of intent to retire from Sue Strauss, who's been teaching kindergarten at TES. She's been there for 29 plus years. And Courtney Morgan has submitted a notification of resignation after 1+ year as a TMS teacher. Moving on to share the success with Bari.
At the elementary school, recently TES sent out a mailing to all kindergarten eligible families regarding the 2024-2025 registration process. Our registration event will take place on Thursday, February 15th. Watch our website and social media for more details. The fall book fair was a success. A special thank you to Ms. LaRochelle and the many parent volunteers who made this possible. We look forward to using our scholastic dollars earned to enhance our school library. At the middle school, this new trimester is a fresh start for all students alike. Multiple after-school activities are up and running: yearbook club, academic club, student council, art club, robotics club, Pokemon Go club, Pokemon club, Dungeons and Dragons club, business club, chorus club, crochet club, and possibly even a science club. New clubs are in the making, with students pairing up with advisors to form these clubs. We have the 8th grade open house at the high school next week, so our students can get an idea of what is ahead for them. For the high school, the senior class officers will be presenting the high school's update later during this meeting. Congratulations to our December Students of the Month, Stephanie Tyros, Milana So, Jessica Nguyen, and Timothy Yeoman. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Bari. Subcommittee updates, we have none at this time.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take item 9C out of order.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That does carry 5-0-0. With that, Mr.
So,
Ogden.
Madam Chair, I'd like to welcome up our seniors to the table at this time as well, Mr. Ogden. I think the highlight of our presentations, generally speaking, are when our students come up and present. So Mr. Ogden's here tonight with the senior class officers to kind of provide an update and foreshadow some things that are coming down the line here pretty soon. So, Mr. Ogden.
Thank you for having us tonight. So, as Dr. Flanagan just said, I do have 3 members of the senior class who are class officers. They're going to give you tonight kind of an overview of how the start of the year is going, what they're looking forward to for the rest of the year, what their plans are after THS, and then they're also going to talk about WIN. As you know, last spring we piloted WIN during our 3rd trimester, and we're all in this year so far. So you're going to get the students' perspective on that, which I think is an important thing to hear. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Yeah, I think we're going to start with introducing ourselves. My name is Dylan Tirado. I'm the current class president for the senior class.
I'm Brooke Kavanaugh. I'm the current class vice president. And I'm Kendall Times. I'm the current class secretary. So we're first going to talk about how the school year's been so far this year. Some highlights of the year: all the playoff sports games and all the senior nights, career cafes, and going on the New Age tour. And then the Give Kids the World field trip was definitely another highlight that Kendall got to go on. So.
Yeah, so I just want to talk about, I play, it's still going to be on the other one. Sorry, it's on me. But it was really nice to kind of see like some sports teams coming through in the fall this year. Like for football, me and my friends, we got to drive out to a few of those games, really be a part of that atmosphere. And then soccer, we got to play in a playoff game this year, which is a nice change up from the past few years where it's definitely been rough. So it's good to see that turning around, and it was kind of crazy having all the senior nights, because like you always growing up, you see all your teammates keep moving on, but being the one like handing your parents the roses is kind of weird for the first time.
And for field hockey, it was also good for us because we got to experience having 2 senior nights since we combined with Drake it this year. So it's definitely a cool experience having 2 of those nights.
Yeah, I just got back from the Give Kids the World trip where we went to Florida for almost a week, and we got to help kids that are pretty sick, and it really just changes your perspective on like what's going on in your daily life when you see like other kids that are so much less fortunate, and you see the parents who are so grateful for everything you're helping them with. So it was a really good trip, and I got a lot out of it. And speaking of that trip, after coming home from that trip, I think Wynn has been really helpful so far this week to help me catch up on work that I might have missed last week. I've pretty much been in the math rooms like every day, getting caught up on the calculus work that I've missed. It's been really helpful to meet up with teachers that can give us one-on-one time and really explain like anything that we've missed or anything that we're behind on. And it's also given us time to form bonds with like other teachers that we may have never had in class, and talk about other things and just get to know them. One thing that I think we would probably all think would be better is to allow the students to schedule themselves. It's kind of a pain, at least in the homeroom that I'm in, to go to your teacher and explain like where you want to be for the week. I know some teachers do it a different way and have them like make a doc to schedule yourself, but it's just kind of like complicated when I think it could be easier.
Yeah, also just gonna add like kind of highlighting like the favorite parts of Win. Like definitely just having that period to like decompress a little bit. Like obviously some days you're gonna want to get your work done, but other days maybe just sit for 10, 15 minutes and then start working or anything. And again, like they said, like the forming the bonds with the teachers. I was talking to one of my math teachers, and one thing they noticed is that like kids really go back to like 1 or 2 rooms for most of it, and then again they really form that bond and get to have conversations that you just like normally wouldn't when you're trying to teach and learn at the same time. And so looking forward to, we're about a third of the way year now, going in the second try. So a lot of college decisions are starting to come out for early action, so it's really cool like seeing our classmates finally, they've been talking about them for so long, seeing people finally starting to get in. And then we have the Italy trip, which I unfortunately can't go, don't have the opportunity to go on, but I'm pretty sure these two are.
Pretty excited for that.
That should be a really fun trip for everyone. I think you get to go in Italy as well, right? Very nice. Missing out. And then prom. So we have our prom venue booked out. We're gonna do it up in Atkinson Country Club in Atkinson. So we also looked at one called Castleton, which is in the area, and then up at I think it was up at Seabrook or one of the Salisbury Beach. But we really decided that Atkinson was the best price, best location, like good for people to get limos to and everything. So decided to go for there. And then senior week, which is the very fun part, we have that planned out. We're starting off with a trampoline park, which we figure, get the week going, let everyone have some fun. And then we're heading over to Six Flags, the beach for a day. And then we're going up to Mel's, which is basically like a Kimball Farm type thing up in New Hampshire, I'm pretty sure. And then we have the cookout that we're having here. And then after that week, graduation. So it's going to be a very, very busy year ahead of us, but we're very much looking forward to it.
So we're just going to talk about like our plans beyond THS. So I'm planning to go to college to major in like business or marketing.
As of right now, I want to go to college for biomedical engineering or something biomedical. And after college, I hope I can travel, see a little bit of the world, and then finally just get a job that makes me happy, makes me money.
Yeah, I'm also going to hope to do the same thing. I'm going to go to college and major in psychology, and then definitely study abroad at some point. And then
Ryan couldn't be here, but he wants to go to college for sound recording technology and get a job at a music studio. I think he's already planning to go to UMass Lowell, so he's pretty set on that.
That's it for the presentation, but
Yeah.
very happy to answer any questions on what we think will win.
They agree. first. Does anybody have any questions or comments for these guys?
So do you think you should put the trampoline park at the end of the week in case there's any injuries? You don't ruin your beach day?
I was thinking that. When I was saying it, I was gonna say start the week off safe with the trampoline park, but I don't. We'll have to consider that one. Then.
So now that you're seniors, is it everything you thought it would be? What's different than you expected?
I feel like growing up, I was always told it goes by fast, and I like thought that was just like, but like it actually really has gone by fast. That we're already like 1/3 through the year, so I'm definitely enjoying it. But it's fun.
It's kind of weird being at like the top of the school too. I have a sister who's a sophomore and then a brother who's a freshman. And it's just like weird that they're in the same school as me and I'm like at the top, like about to leave.
I think like the one weird thing is we didn't really have that like transition into high school with COVID because it was like our 8th grade year into the beginning of freshman. So it was like we're in middle school and then all of a sudden we come back and we're like sophomores. So it definitely kind of feels weird. Like I feel like almost that like feels like we're not as old as we are, but definitely getting out of high school now. So
I promise you're not old.
yeah, yeah.
Neither are you.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming. This was awesome. I applaud your choice of Atkinson. That's where I got married. They have a lovely catering. I strongly recommend enjoying their food, and it's a beautiful grounds. You guys are going to have great pictures and a great time. It's an awesome property. Quick question. You see all these freshmen come in, and I bet they look awfully small, don't they? It's kind of weird, right? What advice do you have for them? As they're, now that you're 1/3 of the way into your senior year, you know what they're going to be walking into in a few years.
I would say definitely just don't wait because, and I think that could be like a good theme for all the way freshman to senior year. Cause like don't wait to like get involved in clubs or sports. Cause I know so many people that are like, oh, I wish I played like soccer. I wish I played football. And they join their senior year and it's like, you can only do so much from there. And like same with say like scholarships for college and everything. Like I didn't realize that some of them were due at like the beginning of this year, like this like actual year. So kind of behind on that. So again, just start as early as you can and don't really slack off.
And then just like take each day as it comes, like enjoy each day. You're gonna graduate like in a snap, like it goes by so fast. So just enjoy each day and live in the moment, I guess, even though that sounds corny.
Yeah, just really enjoy it. It's fun and it goes by fast. Just get involved as much as you can and like do as much as you can.
Awesome.
Madam Chair, if I could just make one statement or ask one question, I guess I would say. So as elected senior class officers, do you feel it's your responsibility to maybe be a voice for the students and see if you can talk to the administration and see how we can improve the win experience and really talk about what that would look like for signing up and different suggestions and processes? I think that's probably a good role or responsibility for you to speak up for your fellow classmates and let Mr. Ogden know that we want to refine things and be as efficient as possible.
They should be able to speak to that. They just did a survey,
Okay,
get feedback.
Okay.
Improve it after the first try, so.
because if this has budget implications, we want to know about it sooner than later.
Very true. All right, well, if nobody else has anything, thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Always
Thank you
the
very
best part
much.
of the year,
Good luck the
so
rest of the year.
Thank you.
good luck.
Guys, thank you for having us.
June 7th, graduation. I don't know when the prom is. Did we say a date on that?
It's the Thursday.
It's Thursday, this Thursday? Perfect. Thank you.
Get back to people on that.
We'll let you know.
Let me jot that down.
Not putting it on the calendar yet.
All right. Moving on to unfinished business. Dr. Flanagan?
Thank you. We'll jump into the slide deck at this point. Just a reminder of the upcoming meetings we have. Budget Subcommittee takes place in January. Our next school committee is January 9th. With School Building Committee, January 17th. So January is out straight. Additionally, it's not listed here because we've not nailed dates yet, but I did have a meeting this morning with the union leadership to talk about beginning negotiations, probably the first week in February, if possible. I think what we've done in the past is commit it to one specific night. So I think if we just go on and off Tuesday night, and we just say we have a meeting every Tuesday till these are done, I think that makes the most sense. I know it gets hard in terms of going Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, particularly when we have the meeting set up. So that'll be coming down the pike as well. So that's where we are in terms of upcoming meeting. In terms of the MSBA update, last week, Mr. Woodlock and I had the opportunity to go down to Hartford, Connecticut to attend a Red Threads conference. Red Threads is a school furniture distributor, and they brought in a leading brain research expert to talk about the science of setting up a kinesthetically appropriate classroom, talked about active learning. We had a great engaging discussion in how the furniture choices that we make can drive the instruction that happens in the classroom. So I think Mr. Woodlock and I got a lot out of the conference, and it was a great opportunity for us to kind of share our insight as practitioners on the ground, K to 12. So that was exciting. So we learned a lot there. We are looking at, I believe the end of January is when we talked about having a model classroom set up of some of the furniture selection we made from Charlotte at the middle school. And what I would suggest is before we have a school committee meeting some night, we'll do a field trip over so you can see kind of some of the pieces that we're talking about and what we're thinking around 6:30, then we can come over here and have our 7 o'clock meeting. So that'll happen in January, February, depending upon when we get the furniture in. So exciting last week, they actually began pouring the concrete flooring for Building A. Building A is the front building that is fully tented, closest to the high school. So that is fully tented at this point. The second floor flooring was poured. I believe they're pouring the first floor later this week. Once that is complete, they'll pull the tent down from there. They'll tent Building C, which is the back wing, and then they'll finish with Building B, which is the gymnasium building. So ongoing work there as they continue to talk about MEP and placement of pipes and wires and runs and a lot of stuff that's foreign to me. And the final thing is, we spent over an hour and a half talking about hardware and talking about what doors need what types of locks and really looking at the schematic of the school 2 days ago, Monday afternoon. So it was great. Mr. Cementelli was part of the meeting with us, and we talked about really making sure that we have a school that is functional, secure, and it meets our needs. So we spent a good amount of time doing that recently. So it's amazing. Every time we have another meeting, the intricacies of building a school, we learn more and more as we go throughout this process, and it's really exciting. So really pleased with the amount of work that's going on right now. We're on pace, and again, the contractors know that we are looking at a January, probably Saturday morning drop-in at some point to do a tour for the school committee and school building committee. So that's online as well. So that's what we have at the school at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Flanagan. Moving on to teaching and learning update, Mr. Woodlock.
Thank you. All right, so buckle up. I got a lot of slides tonight. So I usually try and keep it as brief as possible, and I've definitely attempted to do that tonight. But we're going to talk a little bit about our MCAS results that we've received, and our teachers have dived into. So you're going to see a range of different data points tonight from all of the 3 schools. Examining this type of data, as you can imagine, there's so much of it. It can be what some people term like a rabbit hole. Like you start going down and you almost get lost, and you just keep going. So that's one of the things we're trying to guard against. Making sure that we're spending our time wisely and we're looking at things that we can, apply strategies to improve. That's really important to us. So all 3 building administrator staffs and teaching and learning staff utilized a day in October when we had professional development to dive into the data, to look at it, to talk about it, to identify ways that we can improve. And they're still looking at it. We haven't got through all of it yet. So what you're going to see tonight is really like a 10,000-foot view of some of the aspects that we've already uncovered. We're going to give you, as I mentioned last week, a couple of positive findings from each school, and each school might have a couple of different ones. So, for instance, the high school, they have a biology test, they have a math test, they have an ELA test. So a couple of snippets on positives we found from each of those, and also some areas that we've identified already that we want to target for growth, and some of the strategies that may be put into place already, and some that we're going to try to put in place later on as we go forward this school year. But I do want to reiterate before I dive into all of this that, MCAS is a really important data point for us. It's a measure of what our students are able to identify, positively identify that they understand accordance with the standards that have been set up. So it's really useful. But I think I've cautioned before, it's one of many data points that identify whether a student is meeting with success, will meet with success, the overall success of the school. So it's a really important thing, which is why we're going to spend time on it this evening. But it's one thing, and it's a snapshot on a particular given day or 2 days. So for parents out there that might be listening, if their student didn't particularly score well, that was one day in one, or 2 days in one school year. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but in the aggregate, we look at them and we try to identify trends and opportunities for improvement, and so that's what tonight's all about. So we'll start with THS, and you're going to see a variety of different types of data that we can extract from our MCAS data. And so this one is more or less kind of some overall data trending over the last number of years. And so what this type of data indicates is not a measure of students particularly, but a measure of programs in general. And so if we look at our ELA and math achievement levels, and again, I'll try and identify the different scoring mechanisms that are utilized, but these are the weighted scaled achievement levels, and then they're put into these 4 categories, whether it's exceeding expectations or meet expectations, partially meeting expectations, and then not meeting expectations. So for everyone's information, at the high school level, the 10th grade test that everyone needs to pass to graduate, a student needs to score in the partially meeting or above to earn a diploma. So that's kind of the threshold. Certainly, we want to be in meeting to exceeding as much as possible, but that's how it's scored, and that's how diploma eligibility is determined. And so if we look at these just generally, you're going to see a lot of stability with a couple of anomalies going through some of these categories, and that can happen from year to year. Some years you may have students that particularly do well in a certain subject area, which you would see in 2021 exceeding expectations in ELA. It's a really high percentage for exceeding expectations. But what we're looking at is kind of where are we trending. And so there's a lot of stability in these, but there are also some that we look at and say, like, okay, if we look at our math achievement level exceeding 21, 22, 23, we see it's declining a little bit each year. That's something we need to say, okay, let's keep an eye on that. Our students that have historically scored very highly in math, we want to make sure that we're pushing them to get there. So it doesn't provide any firm or concrete details, but just trends that we need to be aware of. So for our positives specific to English language arts at the high school, 26 of 28 questions on the MCAS exam saw THS students score above a state average. So this is looking at what we would call a test item analysis, and you'll see an example of what that looks like coming up. But teachers and staff can go in and they can look through the data and look at each individual question on the MCAS exam, and they can see how our students scored and what the percentage got correct for each particular one. But then they can also see how that compares to students across the state and the average. Typically, you probably heard me in my other presentations, we don't really like to say average students because there is no average student, but for data purposes, the average is useful. So that's why we say that. So of the remaining 2 questions, the 26 out of 28, 2 we were below state average, and that was minimal, between 1% and 4%. So really that's very good indicator that our students are getting the content that they need and they understand it. Secondly, some significant gains, some significant improvement of our students. So this is looking at specific students. So, in the previous slide, we're looking at different students for each of those years. But for this one, we're looking at how did these students do in 8th grade compared to where they were. And so if we look at exceeding and meeting, we see, 45% exceeding and meeting in 8th grade, but then 62% in 10th grade, which is a really positive development, which means these kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're gaining more and more knowledge and meeting the standards at higher rates. We also see not meeting at 10% and then only 4% in 10th grade. So What does that mean for that 4%? It means that they're going to have more opportunities to take the MCAS again so that they can pass. They'll get additional, now with our win block in 10th grade, in the high school, they'll be able to get specific opportunities to review for the test or get additional support and teaching it as needed. If we look at for areas for growth, of greatest concern is some of the student responses to the essay questions. So the MCAS exam is made up of a majority multiple choice questions, but also essay questions. And what our ELA department found was that our students didn't score as well as they had hoped on the essay questions. So for compare and contrast and literature-based responses, THS respondents scored just 56% of the overall points that they could. And as you can read through these here, I can't even tell you what some of these things mean, but our staff is able to get in and look at really the specific standard and concepts that the students didn't score well in, and then they can make sure that they're focusing on those and getting students practice with those going forward. But below the graphic there, these are a lot of links, and if you go on the actual slides that you have access to, you're not going to be able to link those because that's just a, screenshot. But this information is available to everyone. If you go on the DESE school and district profiles and click on Tyngsborough and click on the schools, and you can look at assessments, and then you can have access to all this. It's available to everyone. As we move on to our science department and biology, the positive, our students outperformed the state average for all students by 11 points, which is pretty significant. That's really great. Our also performed state average for students considered high risk by 11 points, and only 4% of students didn't pass the MCAS. So these are really great numbers here. So what you don't see in this one, actually you can't see it, but it's missing a couple columns, comparing our school to the state averages. You can see that within the item analyses, but you don't see specifically how much better we did there. You're going to have to go through each line item to see that and do the math ourselves. But really strong for our biology department. For areas of growth, they went through the item analysis, the specific item analysis, and identified ecology as one of the content areas where our students didn't score as highly as they would like. And they also noticed that some of the questions that they didn't do well on were the ones that were particularly wordy and lengthy, which makes sense. But they're looking at it in comparison to all other students as well. So we have Keys to Literacy as one of our professional development partners here, and they're working K through 12 this year. They were only working K through 6 up until this year. And that's one of the things that they'll be working on with them is, looking at particular word problems, being able to decompose it and make sure that they deconstruct it is the word I was looking for, and make sure that they fully understand what the question means so that they can provide a better answer. And the science department here at the high school also plans to partner with the TMS science department and make sure that if there are gaps in ecology, that at the 8th grade level and in the high school levels that we're meeting those particular needs. Moving on to math. In specific categories, and again, I can't be specific about what this really means, but congruence and creating equations, our students did really well. And those questions, our students answered 80 to 83% of those questions correctly. And again, here you get a feel for all of the data that our staff is looking at and what it looks like compared to the state. And what I was referring to on the last slide, if you look to the far right on this particular graphic, you can see the school-state difference. And as you see, there's only one on this particular screenshot where our students didn't score above or even with state average, and that was only 1 percentage point behind. But you can see in something like the third one down, evaluate a radical expression that has an exponent using laws of exponents, 20% higher than all other students in the state. So that's a really, really high number. So kudos to our math department there. And our math department looked at, again, that specific item analysis on the questions and identified that students didn't score as well in circles and interpreting fractions as we had hoped. But one of the reasons they were able to identify was some of that gets taught after the math MCAS exam. So we're going to look for ways that we can incorporate either through WIN or opening activities, some of those concepts in our 10th grade so that students have some exposure to that and have a chance to do that. There's going to be something that gets taught after MCAS, and so that could be different in each school or district. But we'll do our best to to manage that. Overall, THS students surpass state averages and average scores in SGP, but not for our high needs population. And so when we're doing our work with our MTSS team and our Inclusive Academy team, that's one of the things that we're focusing on. So their SGP for the high needs category was 29, which really is subpar. We need to do a better job, especially for that student population. Really, we want it to be between 40 and 50, hopefully. Above 50 is great, 60 is amazing, but 29 is just not good enough, and that could be an anomaly. It's something that we're looking at and we're going to take note of and create opportunities to improve that. Moving on to the middle school. A positive that we can look at here, if we look at our 7th grade to 8th grade students, sorry, I'm trying to keep up with my own notes. In math, here again, if we look at SGP for our high need students or high risk students, we're looking at students with disabilities, like so students may have an IEP, any student that is designated as an English learner student, our low income students, they comprise the high needs component. So when these students were in 7th grade, their SGP was 36, which again, isn't what we're hoping for, but it's manageable. But as you look, those students, as they move into 8th grade, they're in the mid to high 40s, which is really a positive. As we look at areas for growth in ELA, generally our TMS students scored poorly in writing. The questions where they were asked to write, we noticed a trend there. Now, the good news is that with Keys to Literacy, that's exactly the thing that we're already focused on and had been identified even as early as last year before these scores came out, that was something we wanted to work on with our students across the board. So there's a focus going on there. And again, these are opportunities with not only MCAS scores, but our IXL scores, which are weekly, and we've really instituted a much more programmatic way of utilizing those in the middle school. We hope to be able to address those gaps, not for next year's MCAS, but as we're moving forward this year in targeting students that need additional support. As we look at mathematics, there was significant growth in some of our students who have historically struggled in math. As a whole, we showed improvement due in large part to what Mr. Pollitt and the math department feel over there is that illustrative math program that we instituted last year. So getting that off the ground we feel was really helpful. Having students be able to utilize WIN to get additional supports where needed has been helpful. And to the right is our 8th grade subgroup breakdown, and we look at SGP again here. And again, SGP is, we're looking at how these students scored the previous time they took the MCAS, comparing their growth to students who scored in a similar category the previous time. So if they're getting 50 or more, meaning they're doing better than most students that scored in the same grouping that they were in last time. So if we look at our high needs category here, we're looking at 54 and 51 for low income and then high needs overall. And then if we're looking at our students overall, we're at 58, which is really great. We don't want to discount other things. Our students with disabilities were at 36. So again, we're starting to see a trend there. We need to make sure that we're getting those students what they need. TMS areas for growth in math, some of the specific skills that they identified as needing to focus on were fluency with math facts. This has been something I've heard K through 8, and I think that probably can be attributed in some part to COVID kind of getting in the way of that practice. But fluency is something that we've been talking about in the elementary school as well as the middle school, and trying to build in opportunities to practice some of those fluency skills. And then there's problem-solving techniques was some of the ones that came up as our students need more practice on. Looking at our elementary school, if we look at our grade 3 percentage of students not meeting the standard, that has definitely improved. Our ELA and MCAS in grade 3 is pretty solid compared to state averages. And if you look at our grade 4 ELA subgroups, and this is probably sounding repetitive to you at this point, you could probably look at these things and start identifying it yourself. But look at the SGPs there. Like, that's phenomenal growth for all of those groups, especially our EL and former EL students. So I'd like to give a shout out to Kate Walsh and her team for all the work that they've done, and to you guys for supporting us and adding another teacher and making sure that we're getting those students what they need. But think about it, for students that are learning English and going to school at the same time, like, there couldn't be a more important thing for them to improve on than their English skills, so that their communication is better, that they understand more, they can communicate more effectively. So that's a really positive thing, and that's going to benefit those students, not just in grade 4, but as they move forward throughout their career. TES identified some areas for growth here too. Looking at individual question analysis, students scored below the state average on 31 questions, which is high, honestly. Fractions was identified as an area to focus on. Grade 3 ELA was generally positive, but there is an area to improve in writing. Again, you've heard that before, but we've already begun to address that. Capitalization and punctuation will be a focal point, as well as having students practice answering questions on a computer prior to actually taking the test. So that's something that we don't think about a lot, is students are used to taking tests in class. They're not used to taking them on the computer. And one thing we don't want to do a lot of is teach to a test. We definitely don't want to spend time like, this will help you do better on the MCAS. That's why we're focusing on it. That's not an approach that I'm comfortable with taking. We want to focus on the things that are important, and hopefully that, shows itself in the MCAS test. But we also don't want to set our kids up for failure. If they never have time to practice taking tests on a computer, and the first time they do is on the MCAS exam, we can expect they're going to struggle a little bit, especially with math, which is a little trickier on the computer. So that's something that the folks at the elementary school are going to focus on. And they're also going to look at testing culture. And MCAS days can be really stressful, and the admin's exploring ways that hopefully make it feel a little less rushed, and think about that. So little things like that can go a long way. So additional opportunities for growth. IXL data has been something we've been focused on, making sure that we're utilizing it. You've heard me talk a lot over the past month or so about our data culture, our data protocols, and IXL is a really key data point to make sure that students aren't, falling into areas where they're getting stuck mid-year, but we don't find out till the next MCAS exam. We want to know that year so we can apply scaffolding and support as needed immediately. Again, presenting math digitally to make students more comfortable with that, and continued study of results, particularly item analysis. And Mrs. Kavanaugh and her team and the teacher leaders there will be working on those in their professional learning communities to continue to look at this data to see if there's more information there that can really be helpful to us. I went through that rather quickly, but I want to make sure that if there was something that popped into your head as I was sharing some of that, and again, that's incomplete data, there's no way we can cover all of it, but wanted to give you some highlights. But is there any questions that maybe popped up as I was going through any of that?
I did have a couple of questions, and hopefully if you can't answer them on the spot, please don't feel like you have to do that.
I'll make no promises, but I'll make sure I can check on it.
I was somewhat curious is why low income is considered high needs.
That's designated by the state.
Okay. And is there anything that from like a school committee perspective and considering budget, if there's materials that we should be budgeting for to help students in those situations? Maybe we don't today.
I mean, I wouldn't say as far as the MCAS exam, if we ask or make requests for budget, it's because we feel it's necessary. So as I talked about the IXL work that's being done at the elementary school, we have a math coach, Erica Cooper, down there, and she's amazing. She's done so much great work, not only helping teachers teach math specifically, because she's an expert in it, but making sure that there's different strategies. She's taken additional courses in universal design and inclusion to make sure that students are getting the right type of instruction when they need it. And that could be some of these populations that, are considered marginalized, meaning historically they've not done as well as typical students, right? And so that's why the state designates them as high needs. So when we come with budget requests later, so one of the things that I'm putting in my budget request is we'd really like to support our teachers with an English language arts coach or a literacy coach like we're doing in math, and extend that up through the middle school. We think that could be really helpful. So when I submitted my budget to Dr. Flanagan, that's part of what that is. And if he sees fit to put it forward to you, that's an area where we could really benefit helping teachers get the coaching and instructional help that they need on a daily basis. Certainly, through professional development, we do that, but we have professional development days 7 times a year, right? And so I'm not saying they're not useful, because I think they truly are, but there's only so much you can do on 7 days out of 180 or 182. So if we have someone that's in the buildings working shoulder to shoulder with our teachers, that to me would be a really great way that you could support it.
And I can't imagine this is new information for anyone who's been on this committee for years. We've been talking about a literacy coach, so.
And then my other quick question for you as well was around, you had mentioned as far as the younger students probably needing a little bit more practice on the computer and being able to do that. Is it possible, I noticed after COVID, elementary and middle school students don't typically have the laptops coming home with them anymore. Is that something that may be considered to change in the future?
That isn't something I can answer directly. I mean, we could talk to Mr. Piper about that, or, also consult with the TES administration and the staff there, identifying whether or not they feel that that is the place where, we need to do more work. But I don't know. I don't know if they've even identified that yet.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna write it down.
Couple questions for you, too. So you said we're testing on topics that aren't taught yet. Is that because, so I'm not a teacher, so this is a stupid question, I apologize, but I thought the state set the curriculum, so are we behind in what we should be teaching, or is the test just not make sense and they shouldn't be testing those topics yet?
Well, inherent in a standardized test are gaps. We can't test everyone at the end of the year once everything's been taught. Therefore, they do, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, meaning those that make the test in the state. They do their best to provide all of the standards and make sure that there are things on there, that are compromised of a legitimate amount of the standards for 10th grade or 8th grade or whatever it happens to be. So, I think when I say like they haven't got to circles and, whatever the other one was, I don't remember at this point, congruency or whatever it happens to be, it means they haven't got to touch it in full. So that's going to happen. That's reasonable. And so when we look at our scores, we don't expect them to be perfect or you've nailed every single thing, but that's why utilizing the comparisons to whether it's our DART schools that the state's identified or the state averages and saying like, all right, we know we're not going to have everything, but where are we? Are we at least doing at or as well as 50% of the schools or 60% of the schools? So it's a useful tool there to kind of gauge like if we're hitting everything. But you never know, like, should we move this up? Or if you do, you need to move something else back and so on. So I don't look at it as a problem. I think our students get some access to everything. But, maybe last year, that's the one that was after MCAS. They did circles, so.
Okay.
And certainly not all of our students got it wrong. So we have to assume they had some access to it or they're really good at guessing.
The other question I had, there was writing development and not necessarily being great at answering the wordy questions, so to speak. I know when I was in college, I never took a technical writing course. That was built into all our other courses as part of those curriculums. Is that something we do with, especially these science courses? Do we ask the teachers to, hey, you know what, kind of put some of these, wordy problems in your test? That way the students, they don't necessarily have to have a, dedicated course on it, but if it's integrated into everything else, they kind of get used to it, especially from different aspects.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And so Keys to Literacy, who is I mentioned as our partner for professional development, that's one of the reasons why I think Dr. Branco really wanted to bring them in, because he's the one that originally set up that contract. Because one of the things is, we don't just do Keys to Literacy with our ELA department. Keys to Literacy is everyone. We're paraprofessionals, math, science, ELA, foreign language. So everyone is getting the same training and expected to utilize these strategies, which help with writing, which help with organizing thoughts, with summarizing, with, effectively decomposing a video or, a piece of literature into 2-column notes as a strategy for organization to make sure that they get their thoughts together or have a strategy to do so. So yes, the idea is that every department, whether it's high school, certainly at the elementary school, they have one teacher in certain areas, right? But as they move up to secondary, that every teacher in every department is focused on reading and writing as part of their curriculum.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. It was a perfect question. Nailed it again.
I have one hopefully quick question, or maybe I think it's a question. So education primarily falls on teachers and staff. But as parents, whether us in this room or at home, we do have to offer some sort of support. Is there anything that we as parents could do to kind of help support the staff to make sure that the kids are ready as we go through too? And like, what can we be doing at home? Or is there an opportunity for parents and staff to partner together to kind of help bring this up as a whole community? Because it does affect the community as a whole.
That's a loaded question. I'm guessing you'd get a different answer from every grade level, every school.
Are we talking
School to school
specifically
be-
for MCAS testing?
Yes. Like if our kid, we as parents know that there's going to come a point, starting in grade 3, where every year our kids are gonna have to be up against this. What can we be doing, I guess, as parents and community members to help prepare the kids, whether that's from a just support perspective or partnering with teachers to help our individual students? Like, is there a way that we can help there for anybody that might
I
be
would
watching
say
at home who's
this,
asking that?
for a couple of personal things, like my wife always made my kids a special breakfast on MCAS day. So that's kind of a nice thing if you think about it, like, hey, it's a big day, I'm gonna make you an omelet today or whatever, so, and sometimes I did it too. But it was her idea. So, that's a great way to do it. Well, one thing we definitely don't want to do, we're spending a lot of time on this today, which should indicate to everyone, this is important data and important things that are going to help us improve. One thing that I am very passionate about is let's not make the MCAS so important that our kids are stressed out about it. We need to make sure that every day is a day where you're learning, you're preparing for the MCAS. And when the MCAS comes, you do your best. And whatever that happens to come out as, whatever. Okay? Now, we know in the 10th grade, they have to pass to get their diploma. For the most part, almost all students do that, especially here in Tyngsborough. So one thing I definitely don't want people to take away from this is, holy crap, we need to get them ready for MCAS, and we're definitely stressing that with our teachers. We take this really seriously. This is a really important data point that can help us get better, but not at the expense of our kids. I've been in school systems, and unfortunately, my kids have gone to school districts where, it was such an important thing, and it was make or break for the teachers and the administrators. That's never been the case here. And we might actually be guilty of falling into a trap like it's just MCAS, don't worry about it. So we want to take it really seriously. It's a great opportunity to show everyone what we know, but it's not making or breaking our kids, and it's not making or breaking our staff. We know we have a good school district. We know we have good schools and good teachers. We just want to get better. And this is one of the vehicles to help us do that. Kids should try their very best and should not worry about it after that. That's my personal philosophy, but I don't think Dr. Flanagan's going to disagree with that. As far as what other, you could definitely work on math fluency at home. That would be great. But I think the teachers are going to work on it, and any help or assistance and support you can give to teachers is always appreciated.
So I just thought of something else. So the MCAS is really just a knowledge check to make sure we're preparing our kids for graduation. Does data exist that can tell us how our kids do once they get to college? Are our kids who go off to college, are they graduating? Are they graduating on time? Is that data that would even be available to us?
So that's a good question that we had tried in the past to track that through Naviance. I know there's been some type of outreach from our high school counselors. I don't have the exact information, but we can certainly check in with them.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to.
Yeah.
I know it's a random question.
I know through Naviance we're able to send out surveys to our graduates, but once they're gone, surveys might not be number one on their priority list kind of thing.
Absolutely.
No,
No,
it's
I
it's
get it.
definitely a question we've asked, though, because we're intrigued by that. We want to make sure that they are, in fact, prepared and doing well beyond, so.
Yeah, I think there's a way to get feedback from our graduated students, and I think that could help.
I know regularly, our guidance department has hosted kind of a welcome back for our recent, relatively recent college graduates, and they talk to our current students, but also it's probably been, I think it started either when you were the principal or when I was the principal, having them come back and give feedback to our staff. Like what was really helpful for you? What did you need more of? I think it was one of the reasons we brought back some final exams, because students kind of said like, well, we liked not having finals, but when we got to college, we have finals.
Yeah.
So getting some practice with that, a lot of feedback, as you can imagine, for the writing research has come back as really incredibly helpful for our college freshmen, having to do a lot more writing as they got into college. And so that anecdotal evidence we definitely have, but more robust data is hard to come by. But I'll check with guidance.
Yeah, maybe we could offer a free ticket to the Thanksgiving or homecoming game if they fill out a survey. Incentivize
To
it.
check with Ms. Palumbo about that. I don't know if she's going to go for that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. I do have a couple other slides I wanted to share with you, if you don't mind. Just as an update on some of what you had asked for more information on that chronic absenteeism number. So I want to give a shout out, I think he's in the back room, Mr. Coughlin. Did a lot of work to kind of try and compile some of this data historically and from what we're looking at. So one thing I don't know if we've fully identified yet is exactly how the state computes their numbers, but Mr. Coughlin was able to generate something that looked very similar. So just a very quick update, because I know I've monopolized a lot of time here, but to look at what our trimester one numbers look like in comparison to last year, especially in previous years. So if we look at T1 23-24 and we look at where our first trimester attendance was, and we kind of multiply that out times 3, and that would give us our number for the year. So for instance, if a student was absent 7 times, we 3 trimesters, that's 21, that's chronically absent, right? So this is what the math works out to here. And so as an overall district, it looks like overall for the full year, last year was 18%, 13% in trimester 1, which again, we'd love it to be single digits, but improvement is our number one priority. At the middle school, we're looking 13 to 10%. And at the elementary school, 17 to 13%. And the high school, 23% to 15%. Now, the high school, as a former principal, I caution that number because you've heard of senioritis. It gets really difficult, and I think absenteeism spikes a bit when the weather gets warmer in the spring. But I think that's a positive trend, and we can keep track of these numbers going forward, just to make sure that they're staying under where they were last year.
I think this is great data, and I think it shows a clear inflection point at the COVID years. I think there's a cultural shift where people are more aware of not going in and potentially infecting people. So, even in the workplace, they tell us, if you don't feel good, just stay home. Where before you were expected to kind of power through and, be tough. Now people don't want you in the office if you're coughing, go home. I think that's really what we're seeing.
Yeah, so I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about we want to see attendance improve, but we also want to share with parents, if students are sick, they need to be at home. So, but good positive signs, I would say.
Awesome. Anybody have any other questions or discussions on that? Seeing none, moving on to new business. Dr. Flanagan, Legislative Committee update.
Sure, just a brief update from the Legislative Committee. As you know, I'm a representative on the Legislative Committee. I want to let the committee know that we are advocating with MASS and with DESE to ensure that we have a superintendent representative on the OSD committee. OSD is Operational Services Division, which sets the rates for special education, out-of-district placement, and things like that. So when we had that 14% increase last year, essentially our association had no representation on the committee. So we are advocating to ensure that we have a seat at the table, or at least a voice in the room when those decisions are made going forward. So that's first and foremost. In terms of legislation itself, there was a literacy bill that came out. I talked briefly about it a few months ago. I will tell you that the legislative committee took action against it. No, as superintendents, it's not that we're against literacy. We are against additional mandates that aren't funded, additional time for teachers out of the classroom, additional assessments being put on our classroom teachers. So it's not that we're against literacy, we're against that specific bill, which was a series of unfunded mandates. So we did take action to vote against that. There are 2 student discipline bills right now at the legislature that are being promoted. One, the legislative committee is highly in favor of, which provides more autonomy to building principals in terms of Massachusetts general law and when a student can be suspended and when they cannot be suspended. Right now, the language is very limiting, so we're looking to give a little bit more autonomy to a building principal for egregious acts that against a person and/or the school. So we are in support of that. And a new one that just came on the radar is we're actually going to take action in January, and I personally will be voting against this. It will be to not allow municipal funding to either install and/or replace artificial turf fields. So there's legislation right now being proposed for limiting that funding. So I think I'll be in the majority in terms of supporting to vote against that, but that will be my position going into that. So that's all taking place, and I'll have more information on that in January. And we are, myself and Dr. Lang, the superintendent in Chelmsford right now, are in the process of preparing or planning a legislative briefing with all of our legislators for March 13th throughout the Merrimack Valley. So that's the work that's ongoing there. And that's it for 9A.
Right.
In terms of 9B, we're not going to take action on 9B tonight, but this was a discussion that was had with myself, Mr. Messina, Mr. McMahon, and Mr. Tenorella. These are the preliminary requests that have been submitted to the town for the capital asset plan. I know that Mr. Tenorella has been highly involved in the capital asset plan, as well as Mr. McMahon for the past several years. And he asked that you all please review this and provide comments to either Tony and/or Ryan, and we'll have a capital assets subcommittee meeting before the next meeting, and the committee will officially vote on this at our next school committee meeting. This was just an opportunity to get the plan in front of you so you can ask questions of anyone on the committee.
No rush, but we do have a capital asset management committee meeting tomorrow night, so if you have anything you want us to talk about right away.
In addition to these?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think when we're submitting the information, Mr. Messina let them know that this was preliminary and that the committee was going to take formal action at an upcoming meeting, so we still have some time.
Right. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Flanagan?
Joe, anything to add to that 9B?
Not at this time, no.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Flanagan. And we will get that to you, Ryan. We will. All right, moving on. Mr. Messina, Finance.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So for signing of bills, there were 10 bill warrants presented to the committee tonight. I do have them all back signed and approved, and as always, the warrant numbers, accounts, and amounts are in your drive. For signing of payroll, since we last discussed payroll, the payroll of November 20th and December 4th were prepared. Again, in your drive is the warrant number and amounts for those 2 payrolls. And this month, tonight, we're doing the November financial package. So in your drive are the 3 reports that comprise that. Your budget as of December 4th, actually, because that was our pay date. The current balances of the school committee's revolving accounts, as well as the current balance of the student accounts. And for the December 1st enrollment, I will leave that with you.
All right. So for December 1st, at TES, we have 752 students. At TMS, we have 371 students. At THS, we have 418 students. We have 22 students out of district for a total of 1,563 students. All right. Anything else?
And one last quick update, we have hit As of Friday, last Friday, we hit 60 days of serving breakfast. Our grand total of meals served is slightly over 25,000. It's an average about 423 a day, which is roughly 27% of our population. And Mr. Tinarella is not here, but I know he always likes those breakfast updates, so
On Tony's behalf, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, moving on to school committee discussion. Bari?
Just thanks to the senior class officers for presenting today. That's all for today. Thanks.
Yep. Again, thank you to the class officers. It was actually nice hearing that they're seeing a positive coming from having Wayne at the high school. I know having a student in each one of the schools currently, I've seen the positives of Wayne right along, and I've seen the benefits in the high school space as well. So it's good to see that there's benefits there and that can continue to benefit our students.
I don't have anything tonight.
Good, thank you.
I'm all set, thank you.
I'm both saddened and very happy for Ms. Susan Strauss. After so many years within this district, she's been such an amazing teacher, a wonderful lady, and again, like almost everybody who leaves this district, they've affected so many lives over the years. I know my son had her as a kindergarten teacher, absolutely loved her, and still wishes her a happy birthday every year. But I just wanted to say, personally, thank her very much for all of her hard work, for coming in and just being dedicated to this district so much. I'd also like to wish everyone a very happy holiday season. I'd like to wish our hardworking teachers, paras, staff a well-needed and well-deserved break. I know they're probably counting the days now, when just on two hands. Rest up, enjoy yourselves, and have a great holiday.
I also want to thank the senior officers for coming out and presenting tonight. I want to thank Mr. Woodlock. I know you're not a data analyst, so that's a lot of data you were able to dive through and present to us. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So yeah, just congratulations to Sue. 29 years, she's been a consummate professional and certainly an advocate for our kids. So just it'll be a tremendous loss, but I'm jealous and I wish you all the best in retirement.
I would also like to echo the sentiments to Mrs. Strauss. I have also had a child and know many other children that have had her, and the kids love her, and so she will definitely be missed in the TES community. Thank you to the seniors for coming out tonight. Now they left, but thank you to their families for supporting them, and it's going to be a crazy and fun year. Thank you, Mr. Woodlock. That was a lot of data, and thank you for your patience with my loaded question. I ask my kids' teachers the same loaded question all the time, so I appreciate it. And that is all I've got. So we have no need for executive session this evening, and so with that, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 5-0-0. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night.